Throughout the past, game developers will go on to overpromise during trailers and gameplay reveals, only to release with overwhelmingly poor performance issues, a plethora of bugs, and many of the promised features being dumbed down to an extreme or just straight up missing. The majority of the people usually chalking these releases up as pure laziness and all for cash grabs. A perfect example of these types of games happens to be the exact game I will be talking about in today's video. From unplayable to laughable, in what seemed like a doomed game, would go on to experience one of the most impressive redemptions in gaming history, and I'm of course talking about Cyberpunk 2077. But before we get into any of that, I just want to say that a small portion of you who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. So, if you guys like what I upload and want to see more, please consider subscribing. It lets me know that you guys want more videos like this, or that you like the content on my channel. With all that being said, thank you all so much. I appreciate every single one of you. Now, let's get back to the video. In order to analyze the complete rise, fall, and miraculous rise of Cyberpunk, we need to go back in time to May of 2012. A lot of people, including myself, were unaware of this event, mainly due to the sheer behemoths of games that came out around that time, which took over the mainstream media and the gaming industry as a whole. In any event, the game was announced and later followed up with official trailers in January of 2013. Many people were initially excited for an action role-playing game set in a fictional city littered with advanced technology at their fingertips, along with many toys to play with in terms of guns and cybernetic enhancements. After the game reveal in January of 2013, there was complete radio silence for just over half a decade in regards to the progress of the game. Not even any updates or any additional trailers were released until E3 of 2018, just over 5 years later. For the first time since 2013, fans of the revealed game finally had more info on the coming action RPG that they were kept in the dark for over half a decade. Cyberpunk had returned to the Xbox showcase at E3 in 2018, where the CEO of Xbox, Phil Spencer, was suddenly cut off mid-speech by an unsuspecting power outage, which was to be a part of the reveal. It would go on to begin playing the official Cyberpunk 2077 reveal trailer, to thousands of fans watching both in person and live on stream. It was later revealed that during E3 a year later in 2019 to feature a very well-known and highly adored celebrity, as you may know as Keanu Reeves, who would go on to also play an integral role in the Cyberpunk storyline as you play the game. Keanu also reveals his character that he will play, the likable rocker boy that we all know and love, Johnny Silverhand. Keanu would also briefly touch on the game's atmosphere, gameplay features, as well as its functionality, as well as the more breathtaking things about the game. He then will go on to announce the official release date of the game, set to officially drop on April 16th, 2020. And well, as we all know at this point, that didn't exactly go quite according to plan. As COVID struck, and struck hard around the world, many industries, including the gaming industry, was hit hard, as many studios had to postpone projects and to continue working from home. This would hinder and delay many projects that were in progress, either being postponed or be finished by working from home. This limits the overall production due to the limited hardware developers had to work with, only having access to their at-home PCs, which wasn't on par with the professional softwares and equipment that major game studios came equipped with. This was led to believe to be the contributing factor to the insanely buggy launch that this game is known for. This is what then led to the first delay of the game, which was pushed back until September 17th, 2020. However, COVID was not letting up during this time, and CD Projekt Red had to postpone the release of Cyberpunk again for the final time until setting on the final date on December 10th, 2020. This will be the last delay, and the game is officially set to release in December, where many patient players like myself were completely unaware of the coming disaster on that very day. Nonetheless, the day had finally arrived. Cyberpunk 2077 was available on both Xbox One and PlayStation 4 consoles as well as on PC, and it didn't take long before people started to air out the many problems that the game came with on launch. Now, before we dive into a select few out of the mountain of problems, I think it's important to note that most of the issues were on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 consoles. PC, however, seemed to be running somewhat normally if the specs of your computer were of mid to higher qualities. Though, even to some players who had higher-end PC builds, they unfortunately would also fall victim to the terrible bugs that plague this game on all consoles. Still, even today, after the latest and the biggest update, patch 2.0, I personally have seen many minute and distracting bugs throughout my playthroughs. Not exactly game-breaking, but it shows that even today, the game still isn't at its complete potential. None of that, of course, is to downplay the huge amounts of work CD Projekt Red has put into the game over the years, but more just to highlight that they still have some work to do in the future. Moving on, many of the players that had purchased the game on console experienced the bulk of the bugs and performance issues right off the bat. For example, many players had experienced scripting issues that prevented players from triggering certain events that would advance the story or side story that they were doing, ultimately locking them out from continuing the game. Most, if not the majority of console players had experienced terrible performance issues with low resolutions and a huge drop in frames, frequent crashes, texture pop-ins, stuttering, and many, many more. Keep in mind that the game was released before the current Xbox Series X and S and PS5 consoles, so most of these performance issues were mainly due to the hardware limitations of the consoles that the game was meant to release on. Though, not all the bugs were just performance issues. Many of the other bugs were included things like the AI and how the NPCs function. For example, enemies would sometimes be able to detect you through solid walls, or not register any dead bodies when clearly walking right beside them. Completely absent NPCs or objects, whether it be important to the questlines or not. The game just simply did not load people, objects, or other assets in the world in some cases. Reviewers move on to report things like invisible cars, NPCs interacting with non-existent objects, or, funnily enough, ghostly glasses raising without anyone nearby. While some of these aren't exactly game-breaking, they're still a distracting factor in the context of its open world. A game that was advertised and promised to include the exact opposite of these happenings. Obviously, these aren't just limited to just performance and rendering issues. There was a lot of sound and audio bugs and glitches as well on top of this already dumpster fire of a release. A few of these audio bugs are native to PC users only. However, console players experience most of these audio issues. Some of these audio bugs are, but not limited to, audio overlapping from various sources, whether it be with gunfire or background noise during pivotal scenes in the narrative, audio and sound crackling over on PC, or even infrequent glitches impacting sound effects and some dialogue in game. The list goes on and on. But to keep this video from being any longer than it needs to be, we have to move on to the Backlash. Just as fast as players would experience a bug in the game, they would also be quick to give their honest and heart-filled review online, and in the respective review tabs on console stores and on PC. Many YouTube videos from both massive and small creators would go on to obviously dogpile on this horrible release as well, calling CD Projekt Red out for the huge amounts of laziness, carelessness, and false advertising.
And it's just unacceptable for a AAA full-priced project like this to come out in the state that it did. It would have been different if they made this game for like, a completely different machine and they ported it over and it was having issues, but CD Projekt Red actually issued an apology basically saying that they were sorry for deceiving people, because that's exactly what they did. They lied to people about this game.
It is not a proper game on release. The fact that they deliberately hid this is some fucking shady and scummy behavior. And people that defend it, well, guess what? You're in the fucking wrong, and I don't care what you think, okay? Because guess what, motherfucker? That is shady, and there is no if and but way around that you can convince me that it is.
There's a lot of problems with it, the biggest, of course, being its performance. I have to talk about that right away. This game is borderline unplayable on PlayStation 4 and just consoles in general. It barely gets above 20 FPS. The bugs are outrageous, not just goofy bugs, but actual game-breaking ones where missions will just not work and you'll have to go through hoops to try and make the game fucking function. It is a disaster in terms of its performance. It is the buggiest game I have ever played at launch. NPCs that wouldn't spawn. I had to save, load multiple times and try tons of different ways of trying to make a single NPC spawn so I could start a side quest. I had to fucking set up a Rube Goldberg machine like, oh, maybe if I set up my car to self-drive itself to me and then I save load and then hop in the car, maybe then the NPC will spawn. I just had to come up with all kinds of like theory-crafted scientific hypotheses to make the fucking NPC spawn to start some of these quests. It was really frustrating.
But the backlash did not stop there. Countless articles would be written criticizing the game and its launch. Some articles even stating that CD Projekt Red would be facing lawsuits due to the failed launch and overpromising the game's release just to increase sales on a failed launch. Nonetheless, the pressure was intense. Many players end up dropping the game because of the insane amount of bugs and glitches well before they've even finished the game. Some even coming up to me and saying personally that the game was just too buggy to play. Cyberpunk 2077 had officially solidified its reputation as a complete failure of a game after being promised so much previously and the constant delays. The COVID excuse, CD Projekt Red, was just starting to seem more like laziness on their part, which was obvious from a player's perspective. The game would go on to lose countless numbers of players due to all these issues, and it seemed like the game had begun to rapidly fade away. Fast forwarding 10 months after the release of Cyberpunk, a huge number of patch notes were released for the game. Most of which were, of course, bug fixes, performance patches, gameplay issues, and many more. The game was gradually getting better and better with every new patch that came out. Unfortunately, the damage had already been done, and many of the players had left the game after only tolerating so much of the awful launch it had. I myself was actually beginning to enjoy the game after all of these patches, many of them fixing the more game-breaking and annoying bugs that had prevented players from having a tolerable experience with the game. Though not perfect, it was beginning to take its shape as time went on, almost aging like a fine wine. Though, even with all these patch notes and bug fixes on all consoles, this still wasn't enough to bring back any of the players that had left previously. It's been 14 months since the release of Cyberpunk 2077, and the first notable patch notes released. Most of the many updates previously would mainly just be bug fixes, performance fixes, and changing up the UI a bit. This update, however, is the first out of the many that CD Projekt Red had added things that wasn't just your typical bug fix, adding the ability to purchase apartments in various parts of the city, as well as having the ability to edit your character's appearance in mirrors. And on top of that, adding new weapons to the game. The game was starting to go on an uptick, catching a few people's attention, but was ultimately scoffed at for the poor reputation it holds after releasing over a year ago. A month later, in March of 2022, yet another patch note was released, fixing certain gameplay issues and improved performance on all platforms. But it wasn't until June when CD Projekt Red had finally teased what would be the catalyst for the biggest comeback in gaming history. On June the 8th, 2022, CD Projekt Red had announced and released an official teaser for an anime that would be called Cyberpunk Edgerunners, in collaboration with a very respectable animation studio in the anime scene called Studio Trigger, as well as Netflix for hosting the anime on its platform. This announcement garnered some skepticism in regards of its quality, some even teasing and joking that it would be, quote, hopefully not be just as buggy as their game on launch. But those who watched anime knew deep down that CD Projekt Red couldn't have picked a better studio to help animate the show, as they are well known and have animated a very successful and popular animes. The show, Edgerunners, would be announced to release its first episode later that year on September 12th, 2022. It seemed like the hype had finally returned for Cyberpunk after years. The wait was finally over, and on September 12th, 2022, Cyberpunk Edgerunners was finally released on Netflix. And surprisingly, the show had amassed a staggering 25 million viewers on the first episode alone. This by itself was nothing to scoff at. For reference, it took the House of the Dragon 1 week to reach 25 million viewers, and that show, at the time, was Amazon's biggest premiere thus far. This show, just off the first episode, was extremely successful. I, myself, was enjoying the show quite a bit, noticing many well-known and famous voice actors in the dubbed anime scene, such as Zach Aguilar, who was well known for playing Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, Alex Lee, known for Zenitsu, also from Demon Slayer, and even Hidenari Ugaki, who plays Goro Majima in the Yakuza series. And to my pleasant surprise, along with many others, Giancarlo Esposito, which I don't need to explain, as we all know who he's most known for.
You are done. Fired. I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter.
It wasn't before long when Cyberpunk Edgerunners had entered the global top 10 for television shows on Netflix. Though the success didn't stop there. After the show had concluded, it had received overwhelmingly positive reactions from viewers, boasting extremely impressive reviews online, and ultimately was a success at the end of the series. Because of this such high praise from millions of people, it caused a huge skyrocket in sales for Cyberpunk 2077, selling over 20 million units after the success of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Many new players have begun chipping in to experience a now better version of the game, able to enjoy everything the game had to offer, as well as finding Easter eggs to the Edgerunners anime, and even exploring locations that were used in the show to take pictures using the in-game photo mode with their characters. As mentioned previously, CD Projekt Red was super grateful for the huge success that Edgerunners had, and after the show was concluded, they released a pretty sizable update, which added a new side quest you can do in the Santo Domingo area that played a clip from Edgerunners. Honestly, the quest is short but sweet, offering some information after the events of the show took place on the whereabouts of the remaining survivor of David Martinez's crew. Plus, upon completing the quest, you get quite a familiar jacket that you can wear, and it just shows how much CD Projekt Red appreciate the fans' support on the show's release. They also added a unique shotgun used by a very likable character, Rebecca, that you can pick up and use it to Adam smash his shit in for, well, doing that. After the massive, gargantuan success of Edgerunners, CD Projekt Red wasn't finished yet. In fact, they had announced yet another monumental feature, though small to some people and only accessible to a select few. It allowed users on PC able to mod Cyberpunk 2077 through a Red Mod program made to make modding much easier and to limit the stress of modding as a whole, making it easier to use mods and to open up endless possibilities for players and mod creators alike. Dozens upon dozens of mods were uploaded, aiming to increase the immersion of Cyberpunk, or to add variety to the game itself, including mods such as character enhancers, a working stock market, an online clothing and vehicle shop, a vehicle mod shop, AI enhancements, immersive add-ons with bartenders, food vendors, ripper docks, and much, much more. At this point in time, Cyberpunk 2077 had officially regained what was lost over the years, and had begun to aim higher and higher with their game, which brings us to the next part of today's video. Cyberpunk at this stage was beginning to have positive reviews, most of which due to Edgerunners' massive success as well as CD Projekt Red's continued support of the game after what happened, which, by the way, most of the bad criticisms was being changed into praise for the astonishing revival of the game and its reputation. Though CD Projekt Red wasn't done yet. In fact, far from it. Just before the release of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, CD Projekt Red had teased an up-and-coming DLC for the game, set to release September 26th, 2023. At the time of writing this script, had already come out. This, after the breathtaking success of the anime and the continued support for Cyberpunk, added onto hype for the DLC, which was ultimately revealed to be called Phantom Liberty, along with its official trailer released early this year. This DLC had everyone excited, including myself, which would add new perks, guns, and gameplay mechanics, as well as introducing new and returning characters in the DLC itself. On top of all of that, including a new exciting DLC storyline to play, with Keanu Reeves excitingly reprising his role as Johnny Silverhand. Another very notable thing next to the DLC is the fact that CD Projekt Red released a major update to the game, which subsequently added all the promised features into the game that should have been added from the very beginning. And honestly, I'm enjoying the new update features at the moment. It keeps the game interesting and isn't just mindlessly buying the best cyberware and guns anymore like it was, but more of you have to pick and choose wisely, as there's a limit to how much your character's body can handle. The new perk system is amazing. I spent a good few minutes carefully choosing perks that would fit my build, and also would be very useful in any situation. CD Projekt Red also snuck in a couple perks after our fallen heroes, Rebecca and David, giving the perks very suitable names on top of adding their pictures as the perk icons. All of the new mechanics of the game are well thought out. The vehicle combat was a huge addition, as previously it was supposed to be a thing since the very beginning, as it was advertised in one of the reveal trailers years ago. Though, thanks to the modding community, there was mods that added vehicle combat, unfortunately limited to only PC users. Now, everyone can enjoy the ever-growing methods of chaos across all platforms with this new update that came alongside Phantom Liberty. I would dive deeper into Update 2.0's features, but I would like to save that for its own video. Maybe even alongside a review of the DLC, Phantom Liberty, if you guys want that, of course. Even throughout all the backlash, the terrible launch, and all the hate towards the incompetence, laziness, and carelessness of CD Projekt Red, I still personally have always enjoyed the game, even during its broken state. So much in fact that I have over 600 hours on Steam and more on Xbox. It was very nice to see the game bounce back from such a terrible, god-awful release. Something that not many games can pull off, at least to this much of a degree and success as Cyberpunk 2077. The game is by all means not perfect, as I still encounter little bugs here and there even after the newest update 2.0. None of the bugs being exactly game-breaking, as you can see here, but there's still a bit of a distraction, and in some cases, kind of funny. But nonetheless, it is certainly in a way better state than when it first launched. As a genuine fan of the game, I'm personally very excited to see what the future of this game holds, with the endless possibilities and mods, and future DLC content to be potentially added. Whatever CD Projekt Red does in the future for this beautiful, now masterpiece of a game, I know, along with millions of others, is that Cyberpunk 2077 will forever be known as gaming's greatest comeback in recent history, as well as its rebound and legacy, all of which will by no means never fade away.
And then C ain't a city that lets you get by without buddies. So what are you?
More like this. Balance, friendship, love.
Thank you all so much for watching the video, and a very special thank you to those who watched all the way to the end. This one took the longest to edit as well as to write the script for, and was definitely the most different upload I've ever done. But if you enjoyed it and made it this far, please consider subscribing. If you want me to do a review of the Phantom Liberty DLC, and to go through the newest features with the new update, let me know in the comments below. If enough people want that review, I will definitely see to it in the near future and will obviously update you guys. Anyways, with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching till the end. You guys are the best. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, I will see you all in the next upload.
On behalf of the staff of the Independent California Motel, I wish you all sweet dreams.